Ai Shwmae Sitdachi Croesoi Chris Dewey. What's cracking, boys, girls, ladies and gents? How is everybody doing? Today we are talking about Trial of Champions, a fighting fantasy book written by Ian Livingstone. Now, I just wanted to say, I have a feeling that when I did my Death Trap Dungeon video, I incorrectly said this is a sequel. I don't think it is. I honestly don't think it is. Obviously, I've read the book. It just says, at last, a return to Death Trap Dungeon. Maybe that's where people got the idea from. You're literally just going back to this dungeon. It doesn't imply that you are the same character as the one in Death Trap Dungeon. With that out of the way, let's talk about Trial of Champions. So, with the Trial of Champions, I think it's worth reading the back. And it says, the warped, twisted mind of Baron Succumvit has completely redesigned the deadly labyrinth of Fang. New traps and terrors, mazes and monsters await you at every turn. And before you can enter the labyrinth, you must endure the gladiatorial games of Lord Carnus, the Baron's evil brother, whose unwilling slave you are. Can you survive the Trial of Champions and free yourself from slavery? Now, if the gladiatorial games, if that sort of thing caught your attention, if your ears perked up, it's actually really good. The gladiatorial part of this book is really good. It's really well written, and that's the thing, ladies and gents. That could have been a book in of itself, and I would have read that. I would have really enjoyed that. But I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? So let's follow standard protocol, I suppose. Let's do the old-fashioned way with these videos. So, Trial of Champions. Yeah, it was published back in the 80s by Puffin, early 2000s by Wizards, and unfortunately, Scholastic have no intention of currently have no intention of republishing the book. Shame, because the book's honestly really good, boys and girls. But without further ado, let's talk about covers, because I am excited to talk about this book itself. So I am just going to talk about the covers. So without further ado, let's look at the Puffin cover. Now, the Puffin cover is actually really, really cool. It shows you the gladiatorial games. You're in some sort of arena. Well, I say you're in some sort of arena. The cover is set in some sort of arena with Lord Carnus overseeing it. It's really cool. It's like something like out of 300 Spartacus. It's that kind of thing. It's really, really cool. And it's very reminiscent, because there's a part in the gladiatorial game part where you've all got like blindfolds, you've got bags over your heads, and you're swinging these like flails, and you're trying to be the last one to survive. I thought that was really cool. Actually, I'm not sure if this is what it's meant to be depicting. I've got a feeling it might be. Yeah, because you all the characters have like blindfolds. That is really cool. That is a really good part of the book. And I like this cover because it's set during probably one of my favourite parts of the book. And I'm going to get into why the first quarter of it is my favourite. I'm going to get into that, but it is. I love this cover. It is so cool. But I think we need to talk about the Wizards version, because the Wizards versions are always cool also. So we got the Wizard version, and the Wizard version is really, really cool. It's like this creepy little corridor with like this skeletal horse coming towards you, with like this knight. Well, he's a skeleton king. He pops up in the book, spoilers. And it's really cool. Again, it's really creepy. It's quite claustrophobic. You feel as if you have to fight this thing. You're too close to be able to run away at this point, and he's on a horse anyway. How are you going to fight? Furthermore, I like Legions on the Gash, boys and girls. This cover really plays into how much I enjoy Legions on the Gash in Age of Sigmar. I like this cover so much, and it's always been one of those covers I remembered. Originally, when I was going to talk about Death Trap Dungeon, I had this cover in mind. I forgot that it had like a skeleton sat on the throne, and this is the thing, because obviously the setting. I say obviously, the setting, you're in Death Trap Dungeon again, so I just thought this was the same skeleton from Death Trap Dungeon. But no, I don't think it is, and I don't know if he'd promote a skeleton anyway. That's quite weird. But yeah, this cover's really cool. It's really atmospheric, it's quite creepy, it's quite confined, it's claustrophobic. I love it, man. I love this cover. But, and this is the sad part, boys and girls, I actually can't put these covers first or second, because I like them both equally. They're both really cool covers. There's no sort of tiebreaker here. I'm really happy with both covers. I love them both. So, now that we've talked about the covers, should we talk? I think we should talk. We're going to talk about the story that the adventure that you go on in Trial of Champions. So the story sort of sets out. You head off, on your boat, on your boat, and this massive galleon comes barreling past, obliterates your boat. Your ship is now just a bunch of splinters in the ocean at this point, and there's a rope that gets handed down. You climb up the rope. Boom, guess what? You've been taken prisoner. You're now a slave. And I think you're just sold into slavery to Lord Carnus, who wants the best slave to be entered into the Trial of Champions. Because Carnus wants that 20 grand gold prize. And this part of the book is honestly really good because there's so many slaves and he's just trying to whittle it down to the last one. So there's loads of challenges, loads of trials. And I'm under the assumption that these ones you can actually just flat out game over if you do the wrong thing. Because the first trial, you're sort of doing laps on hot coals, and the person who sort of gets lapped first, it's like if they're dead last and the person who's first overtakes them, that person will be game overed, or if anyone falls over, they're game overed. And what happens is, you're sort of racing this other guy, and the whole race is sort of concluded when a dwarf collapses and everyone's taken back to their cells, and that dwarf is promptly put out of their misery. And this is really cool again. Like, I love it because you go in and I'm not sure if this is the part when there's like a guy in there that attacks you. I don't think it is, but then it moves on. Basically, how I put this is there's loads of trials in this segment, because first one you got the coals. I know there's one then when there's like you're playing jump rope, skipping rope, but instead of a rope it's like a pole with a blade on it. So it's either going to catch you in the ankle or it's just going to behead you. I thought that was really, really cool. It is really cool. It's like Saw. Or there's one where you're all blindfolded. Now this one's depicted at the start, well, on the cover of the Puffin edition. You've got like this metal mask and you've got like a flail attached to your arm and you're swinging it and you're trying to find out where everybody is so you can just knock them, and like you're sidestepping trying to avoid getting smacked. That was really cool. You've got another one where you have to fight this massive monster who sort of flexes his lats, and it's revealed that you just need to knock him over and he's game overed. You cannot get back up. That was good. That was really good. I think the conclusion now, I really enjoyed the conclusion to this book, because you are on a one-on-one fight now with Lord Carnus's champion. And now this guy is just called the Southerner. Now, when it says the Southerner, because what you're going to find, I think there's another guy called the Easterner, who's very, very obviously a Chinese stereotype. So when it said the Southerner, I expected to be up against a redneck or something like that, someone who's just a hillbilly. No, it's like an African war tribe leader, war boss, war king, tribal leader. He's cool. It's not done disrespectfully, but he looks really cool, and you beat him, but he can beat you. You gotta do combat. But if you beat him, he's like, you've beaten me, but when you go on your Trial of Champions, if you ever have time alone with Lord Carnus, remember all of us who did not make it. And that's really cool, man. I love the gladiatorial area. If there was a book, like I said, if there was a book where you're just like a gladiator, I would have loved that. My goodness. Why didn't they do that? Because that's such a good idea. But, unfortunately, I have to continue. What happens is, yeah, you're entered into the Trial of Champions to represent Lord Carnus, and all the people who've died needlessly along the way, you're sort of doing it for them as well. You're like, I can't let their deaths go to waste. So what happens is you're the second one to enter the Trial of Champions, and yeah. And this is really where it's going to go. This now is the meat and the potatoes of the story, the Trial of Champions itself. So if you've read Death Trap Dungeon, you're sort of going to understand what you're up against, except the dungeon's completely redesigned. There aren't even any like throwbacks. There's no like references or like cute little Easter eggs. Completely and utterly disappointing. But you need to collect a certain amount of items and complete it, basically. And the items you're collecting are little gold rings, and Believe it or not, these are really easy to miss. This one is quite a hard collectathon, actually. You need so many items to complete this one, and there aren't even any references to to Death Trap Dungeon. In my opinion, I didn't see any. But yeah, that's basically it, boys. You just need to get your rings, and you need to get out. It's very much like Death Trap Dungeon, where you needed to get your gems, and then you needed to get out again. Except, obviously, these rings are very well hidden. You need to collect a lot of items, and that, as a result, does make this book quite difficult. But the difficulty's done right. It's not like Creature of Havoc, where there's just annoying hidden pathways, or like codes you need to break. You just need to collect loads of items and explore. So, for instance, my very first sort of like oof moment, I walked over to a bridge, and you needed to donate one gold item or climb down. So me being me, I was like, okay, what happens if I climb down? Can't remember, it wasn't very interesting. So I'm like, okay, I've got to go. I lied. I said, okay, what happens if I have got a gold item? You put a gold ring in this bridge. And dare I say, this is what's going to set off your adventure. You're going to see this, you're going to go, ooh, I haven't got that ring. I better go find it. And that's exactly what happened to me. So I spent my adventure just roaming the corridors of Death Trap Dungeon, and it was just fun. It was almost nostalgic, if it wasn't for the fact that it's just a completely new setting. There are absolutely no throwbacks to Death Trap Dungeon. If it was like that, I probably would have liked it a bit more, but I spent all my time roaming these corridors. And you bump into the contestants, you meet a few contestants, one of them's a bit of a douche, but you know, you deal with him as you always do in these books. And then hopefully you conclude your story. But one of the best part is you meet some of these fantastic monsters, man. There's like this tall dude, this really creepy dude. I wonder if I can like flick to it now whilst I've got the book in my hand. I don't think I'm gonna make it, guys. Don't think I'm gonna do it. Ooh. I want to say he's sort of like there he is. There he is. Oof, can you hear that noise? Yeah, you got the Strider, who's sort of like this, like he's got really long arms and legs, but he's got this he's got like this. You know Darth Maul from Star Wars? He's sort of got like a spear version of that, where it's like a long pole with like two blades on each end. He's really cool. I really like that monster. That's one of my favourite monsters in Fighting Fantasy universe anyway. And this is the thing, the adventure's really nice. It's a really cool thing. The only thing, I think what dampened my experience, or my expectations, I honestly expected so many callbacks to Death Trap Dungeon, and they weren't there. But that doesn't matter, because the adventure's good. You get all your gold rings. There's one point where you're running, you go through this doorway, and it closes and it locks itself behind you. And you're running from zombies. How cool is that? Like, that's amazing. That's actually really cool. So, you know, I think I'm so gushing over this book. I did really enjoy Trial of Champions. I'm not going to spoil the story. I don't want to spoil the story, see? Because this is the thing. With the previous videos, I tend to go into too much detail and just spoil it. With this one, it just feels like the whole story pretty much has you in this dungeon. And that's basically the story, if that makes sense. So it's kind of hard to like talk about stuff in explicit detail without spoiling things that might be important to your enjoyment of the book. So I'm sort of being vague on this one. I'm sure with the next one, because the next one's a sorcery book again, I'm sure that one I could be a bit more in detail. But yeah, with this one, it's just good. Like, it's honestly a good book. The only thing is, and this is going to be my like only real criticism, is it sort of tries to be Death Trap Dungeon, but it doesn't quite do it. It's sort of like Death Trap Dungeon 2 Electric Boogaloo, but it's just not as good. It's like Spider-Man 2 compared to Spider-Man 1, or is it Spider-Man 3 compared to Spider-Man 2? No, actually, yeah, Spider-Man 2 compared to Spider-Man 1. Green Goblin was amazing. I loved William Dafoe. I love, you know, those Spider-Man films in general. I preferred William Dafoe as Green Goblin to Dr. Octopus. But I'm sort of digressing. I'm going off topic here. The only criticism I have of Trial of Champions is that it doesn't do enough to sort of encapsulate the feeling from Death Trap Dungeon, and I'm not even sure if it wanted to. But you're in Death Trap Dungeon, so I don't see why there aren't like Easter eggs and references and sort of, you know, that kind of thing, because you come to a dead end at one point and it says there are no secret passageways here, And like, it felt like a reference, but I don't think that's a reference to Death Trap Dungeon. I think it's more of a reference to Creature of Havoc, and then you just sort of, why say that, bro? But yeah, I think that's literally all I have to say about this book that's bad. It's not as good as Death Trap Dungeon, but it's nice to be back. But what happens at the end of the book? Do you want to know? What happens at the end of the book is you win, you get out, and the final thing is you have to say how many rings you've got, and you're given the option of lying, but you put down all your rings, and then he's like, okay, go to this reference, and if you haven't got this reference, he zaps you, and he's like, oh, you've got that reference, go to this one, and then he zaps you if you haven't got that one. You need to give him 3 references. Now you pick up these references all around Death Trap Dungeon. Spoilers, one of them's on a contestant that you bump into. And then I suppose you just sort of let out. And then you win. Lord Succinvitz is like, bro, here's 20 grand, my G. And Lord Carnus is like, no, I want that money. He says, okay, I'm going to give you one wish. What is your wish? And you go, I want to fight Lord Carnus. And then you sort of like get him back for all the slaves that he killed. And I loved the ending. The ending was so satisfying. Oh, and this one is a prequel to Armies of Death. So you spend your 20 grand on an army just to go off killing stuff, which is weird and chaotic. I love it. So I suppose in conclusion, Trial of Champions absolutely deserves a place on your bookshelf. It absolutely deserves a read. And although it doesn't live up to the unbeatable hype of Death Trap Dungeon, I think this book is very good. I think this book is good. All the encounters seem to be fun. There are some elements, I think, of like maybe sloppy writing, where like if you say, oh, I use a gold item to cross this bridge, it immediately jumps to a gold ring, where like you might have someone else that's gold. In all fairness, I don't think you do have anything else that's gold, but it just felt like, ooh, kind of spoilers that, isn't it? But yeah, I enjoyed this book. It deserves a place on your bookshelf, and it deserves a read. If you like Final Fantasy books and you haven't got this one, jump onto the old eBay, maybe find your online used bookseller, and purchase a copy, because it is a good book. Yes, the gladiatorial games could have been a bit longer, but at the end of the day, I think, yeah, it is a good book, and I honestly do think it deserves the 5 out of 5 that I gave it on Goodreads. So yeah, that's about it, boys. That's about it for my conclusion. So next Thursday's video is going to be on Sorcery, the 7 Serpents. I've got the book in my hand, you know, that's because I didn't really know what number it was, so we're going from 12 to 13. This is going to be my 13th video on a book of Final Fantasy, I suppose. It looks like a good book. I'm looking forward to reading it. It's going to go up next Thursday. So yeah. So if you've watched this far, obviously, feel free to like, subscribe. Don't be afraid to comment. And thanks for watching. I honestly hope you have a lovely day, a lovely week, and I hope you take care. So without further ado, goodbye.